Folks, this whole Spygate setup of Donald Trump, was this a setup? Was he framed the entire time? The answer is obviously yes. But here's the big question. This whole case started because the FBI was just looking for a reason, and John Brennan, to tie Trump, we now know this, to the Russian alleged hacking of the DNC. How do we know this? Because John Brennan told the FBI Hillary Clinton was trying to do that. That's step one in understanding this. The FBI knew because of John Brennan telling them that Hillary Clinton wanted to invent a Trump collusion with the Russian scandal. The only way Hillary could do that is with the FBI's help. But did the FBI knowingly comply with that demand as far back as May of 2016 and actively engage in a setup takedown of the Trump team? Folks, what starts this whole thing off, obviously, is Hillary's plan and plot to tie Trump to the Russians. But they needed to get some evidence to move forward. So what starts it off is this Australian diplomat on May 10th in London meets with George Papadopoulos, who's a member of the Trump team. That sets off this whole chain of events. At that meeting in London on May 10th of 2016, it's alleged that Downer passes on to Elizabeth Dibble from our embassy that, hey, we met with this Trump team guy and he said all this crazy stuff about, Hillary Clinton's emails and Russia trying to help the Trump campaign. The FBI's like, wow, look, we got what we needed. You following me, Armacost?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what if that meeting with the Australian diplomat was a setup the whole time? Covered a little bit last week, but I'm going to add some stuff today that is going to open your eyes. So the head of the FBI's counter intel division that does this stuff, he has two people on top of him, Jim Comey and Andy McCabe, the deputy director. The guy's name is Bill Priestep. The meeting with Downer in London with Papadopoulos, which we've been told just happened. Oh gosh, it just happened. I don't know. Was this a setup? Who was in London at the exact same time? Let's go back to this email I showed you last week. Was Bill Priestep from the FBI in London the exact same day this setup went down? Here's his own email. Look, E.W. Priestep. Sir, he's emailing Andy McCabe. That's his boss. I will be out of town next week. And so I wanted to provide you my initial thoughts. This email was sent Friday, May 6, 2016. Oh, boy. Kind of explains, too, why Bob Mueller got the date wrong about the Papadopoulos meeting in his report. He got the date wrong. Why do these guys keep getting dates wrong? Bob Mueller's report, he writes Papadopoulos meets Downer on May 6th. No, that happened on May 10th. Why would he write that? Maybe because Mueller knew Priestep was in London next week after May 6th? And maybe Mueller doesn't want you to know that the FBI may have been supervising this whole meet the whole time. Well, how do we know Priestep was in London the next week? Maybe he was just lying in his email? Well, we have the texts of his subordinate, Peter Strzok, who works for Priestep, where he's texting his girlfriend, Lisa Page, an FBI lawyer, and he says this in a text. I don't know that Bill will read it before he gets back from London next week. Sent the 4th of May, 2016. Oh boy, that sounds awfully bad. Was the FBI supervising this whole setup? You may say, oh gosh, I don't know, Dan, just a coincidence that the head of the FBI's division that's investigating Trump for a collusion hoax that doesn't exist just conveniently happens to be in London when the whole setup of Papadopoulos goes down, where they invent a collusion hoax that doesn't exist. Remember these old texts I showed you? Because the FBI has consistently told us, no, that's not possible that we were involved in the setup here. The Downer-Papadopoulos meeting, which was the setup. Because we didn't even find out about this until late July, this Downer meeting. Really? That's interesting because Priestep was in London. And then here's Peter Strzok's text on May 10th, the day the actual meeting goes down. He's texting his girlfriend, Lisa Page. Page is outbox, Strzok is inbox. This is when the meeting's going down, May 10th, because they're dedicated to this case. How did that come to you? Overheard, redacted. Plan to tell deputy director as grist for his call to get Carlin to take it seriously. I neither told nor invited Jones. I know. You need to find out how he knew. I talked to Andy about it. He's out permanently. He will discuss with Bill. Let me translate that for you. On the day Papadopoulos meets Downer, his Peter Strzok's boss, who's investigating Trump, is in London the day the meeting goes down in London, and Strzok is texting his girlfriend that we need some, quote, grist for Carlin. Grist for Carlin? Who's Carlin? John Carlin was the Department of Justice's head of the National Security Division at the time. They're looking to give him some grist? Who also was John Carlin before he had that position? He was Bob Mueller's chief of staff. Is John Carlin read in on this setup too? And they're trying to get him some, quote, grist for this collusion hoax by setting up Papadopoulos with Downer? Convenient explanation for why Bob Mueller gets the date wrong, air quotes, in his report. He keeps indicating in his report that the Papadopoulos meeting, which we know happened May 10th, happened on May 6th. He's just lying because he doesn't want you to know about these texts on May 10th. And he doesn't want you to know that the FBI was in London the entire time this thing was going down. Oh, it gets even better. Look at these other texts here. Again, the day after now. You can see the date here. Here's Strzok's inbox, outbox. He's texting his girlfriend, FBI lawyer Lisa Page. Here's May 11th, the following day. Remember this one? He says, I have to talk to Andy and John and George about the urgency if he hasn't. I spoke to David. He's talking about probably David Laufman. Can explain later. I tried to communicate the same thing to him. That's a DOJ attorney. We're waiting on the next version of affidavit from you. I'm certain there are other things that can be prepped. Page responds back, Deputy Director calling state now. Strzok responds, ooh, I want to hear about it. You already talked to redacted? So they're very concerned about some operation that's going on, so much so that Lisa Page tells Strzok that, hey, Andy McCabe, the Deputy Director, is calling the State Department now. What was that conversation about? Was it about the tip we already know, the air quotes tip Alexander Downer gave Elizabeth Dibble from our State Department about Papadopoulos? How, hey, this Trump guy's got information about collusion with the Russians. Was this a setup the whole time between the State Department and the FBI? Certainly makes this CNN article, given that this meeting happened in London in May of 2016, quite the more interesting, doesn't it? This is a CNN article from April 14th of 2017. British intelligence passed Trump associates' communications with Russians on to U.S. counterparts. CNN Politics, April 14, 2017. Makes that article a lot more interesting, doesn't it? And don't you find it extra super weird that the chief of station for our CIA in London at the time this setup went down was Gina Haspel, who's the current CIA director, who current reporting indicates is terrified about all this stuff coming out and is blocking the release of some of these documents? What are the chances that the chief of station for our own CIA in London did not know about this? 0. Explains why she doesn't want any of this out there.
You just heard Dan Bongino.